start recording this. So, all right, so we got the recording going. So welcome everybody. And as we start going through this training, here's the first thing that I want you guys to do. I wrote an email if you didn't see that. I just want you to think about an area of life that you want to work on today, right? It doesn't mean that this is broken. It doesn't mean that it's not great. It could be something that is either not working for you or it's not working for you as well as you'd like it to, okay? And you're just going to want to write down that area of life. So that could be like your relationship. It could be your health. It could be your relationship to finances, really anything that's kind of like at the forefront of your mind. And I want you to kind of work with this today, okay? So once you have that area down, and that's why you need the pen and paper today, I want you to just jot down like a few bullet points, like 2 or 3 things that you can specifically say to yourself that are not working about this area of life, okay? So I'll give you like a minute to do that. If you have any questions about the directions I'm giving, please ask. Do not be afraid to ask any questions. If you want to come out here and talk to me, please let me know. I'll happily bring you out here. I'll engage with you. You can ask questions. We can even do a little bit of coaching if it fits. Okay, so again, you're picking an area of life that you want to work on, and then you're writing down 2 or 3 specific things that you feel are not working in that area of life, okay? And then if you do have that written down so that I know that you do, I believe you guys can raise your hand, right, like virtually speaking in the box. So if you guys just raise your hands and let me know as you get that complete. And that way I am not speaking over you while you're writing. Okay, cool. Thank you, Jerry. Jerry's complete. Matthew's complete. Neen is complete. Brilliant, brilliant. We've got a few more in there. Complete. And for those of you guys still logging in and joining us, welcome everybody. So if you just logged in, really quick, what I'm asking you to do is pick an area of life that you want to work on today. Again, it doesn't have to be an area that's like in shambles or anything like that. If it's not working and you want to really go to work on it, that's fine. It could also be an area of life that's working for you, but maybe not working as well as you'd like it to. All those are valid. And then quickly write down 2 or 3 bullet points, you know, specifically what you feel or think is not working for you about that area of life. Okay, and again, it could be like relationships, finances, health, or really you could pick anything that you want. Okay, all right, so I'm gonna lower all the hands since I think we got a whole bunch of you in there. And then I wanna just start like talking about and discussing, hey Anna, nice to see you. You know, like what really doesn't work with people. And I wanna uncover for you and give you insights into the way that the mind functions and where it actually creates dysfunction for us, right? So I'm gonna share some stories with you today, specifically one about my life and how this impacted me and how this created probably the biggest jump off point transformation of my entire life. And it's an event that happened to me when I was 19 years old. So we'll get into that in just a second. And in the back of all this, I want you to keep in mind that there are structures at play, and it's sometimes difficult to see whether they're by design of the biology or by design of the way that we've been socially brought up. Sometimes those two are really scrambled and difficult to see which one's which. But there are specific designs in our humanity consistent with 3 different areas that I want you to keep in the back of your mind today while we discuss these things. There is a design to the way that we think, okay? It is design in the way that we communicate, and there's a design to the way that we take action. And mostly we don't take time to discuss and or look at what are the designs of thought, what are the designs of communication, and what are the designs of action, okay, as a human being. And every human being, by the way, has the same design when it comes to these 3 areas of life. Most people, when they have some kind of issue in health and finances and their relationships, they go and they start thinking about it and they start doing processing, okay? So I want to clue you in a little bit, at least into when I start inquiring about thought, what I've come to. And it's really important for me to let you know that everything I share with you guys here is not the truth, right? All truth, in my personal opinion, my humble opinion, it's a relative truth. What's true for one society and is absolute to them in relativity to another part of the world in that society, it's not true at all. And this goes for your problems also. If you have some kind of problem that's ongoing in your life, anybody on the planet could choose that problem also. So if you have a problem with finances, for instance, I would assert that the reason you have a problem in the finances is a specific reason that you're actually creating and having conversations about that thing as if it's a problem, where other people are in the same circumstance as you and they don't have a problem with that at all, which is an interesting phenomenon when you start looking at where do we create problems from. And again, I'm just kind of like dripping these little ideas in there, because what I want to offer you is that even though what I'm telling you is not the truth, the ways that I've gone about inquiring and studying and learning about these things is by taking away the meaning that I'm looking for a truth at all. And I consistently inquire in these different areas of life to see what I can see that's going to keep opening up new possibility and empowerment for me in these areas of life. So I've inquired greatly into my relationships. I've inquired greatly into my health and into my finances. And if you guys know me, for those of you guys who've been around me a long time, you'll know that, and this is not to brag, but like I genuinely believe I live an extraordinary life. I'm 33 years old. I'm in the best shape of my life. I have amazing relationships all around me. And our business is a multiple seven-figure business. So you could say that to some extent, I've handled a lot of these areas of life. And or you could say that like I'm living my life in an above average type of way, which I consider to be extraordinary. And again, a lot of you guys do know my life story and stuff like that. And this is not to brag. It's just to show you that because of these inquiries, because I've done this inquiry in my life, because I've done this work, I'm telling you that it's a direct correlation to what I'm able to produce in my life. So I really want you to look at the work that we're doing here as your ability to produce the results that you really want in life. And mostly people have done no training on actually how to be productive in life. They see productive as doing busy work. If I work more, I must be being productive. And I would actually challenge that thinking and say that I found very little correlation between working more and productivity. And a lot of you guys know this. You get into a job space and everybody's running around looking busy, but there's not a lot of productivity, right? And this type of work has you get to the core of why it is that you're not being productive. And oftentimes why you're not being productive does have to do with your relationships in some way, shape, or form, which is why a lot of people go back and work on their relationships and get a communication, okay? So I know there's some comments in there. I'll come back to them in a second. Otherwise, I'll lose my focus and then we'll all be all over the place. So again, if you just logged on, you're going to pick an area of life that you want to work on. Either it's not working well for you or it's not working as great as you'd like it to. And you're going to quickly write down 2 bullet points, specifically what you feel or think is not working for you in that area of life, okay? So let's just look at thought really quick, the design of thought, and then we'll talk about communication also. And action will kind of like shave it off the side a little bit as we get through this. The design of thinking, as best as I can tell, only deals with the world of recall. So thinking is caught in the past. And what you're doing is you're consistently recalling the past over and over again and mulling it over. It's the type of stuff that keeps you up at night, right? You know, when you're trying to sleep and the voice in your head is just and just keeps going and going. And all it's doing is just recalling the past. It's filled with remorse and regret, things you'd want to change, people you think are wrong, judgments, good, bad, yes, no, I agree, I disagree, all this kind of stuff. And also, I want to say that while you're listening to this, because this isn't the truth, you might hear that little voice going, I agree, I disagree, this is right, this is wrong. And if you do that with what I'm sharing here, you're going to ineffectively listen to what I'm saying, because you're not going to be listening to what I'm saying. You're going to be listening to what it's saying about what I'm saying, and that's not what I'm saying. So if you want to walk out of here with the opinions of the past, with all the information you already have and experiences that you have, let that voice run rampant while I'm talking, and then you'll walk out of here with what you already know. So I just want you to pay attention to that voice while I'm speaking, because it's going to do that. It's going to agree, it's going to disagree, it's going to inquire, and I want you to inquire, right? And look at if the things that I'm sharing with you, when you look at your own life, can you validate your own experience through the things that I'm sharing? And again, it's just because I've spent many, many years inquiring about these things, not the truth, but here's what I've gotten to so far. And it's giving me access to all these different worlds and paradigms that you might not have access to, because you're literally probably have put yourself in some kind of prison about what you think is possible for you. And this is where people get stuck in their finances and their health and relationships for really long periods of time with things that aren't working for them. And today we want to like really get to the heart of and start looking at how do you dismantle these stories that seem so real to you so that you can start inventing, right? Inventing and being part of the creation process of new stories for yourself, and then start taking actions consistent with your new stories. Most people don't have any clue how to do this, okay? And this is all the work we've been doing for like 14 years. So our stories have gotten pretty good over time. And I want you to really inquire into your own stories, what's not working. So again, to the design of language, if the design of language is just to recall the past over and over and over again, and you're having a problem, and that problem requires some new solution that's future-based, how could you use thinking to get to that problem, right? Einstein has that famous quote. It's like if you do the same thing over and over again, that's insanity. It's kind of like that. He had another quote that says something along the lines of, to solve the problems that we have today, you need a new mind, or something like that. You need a different mind to create the solution. I'm paraphrasing, of course, because I don't remember the exact quote. And it's kind of what I'm getting at, is if you just keep going into there and using processing and here's what I think about it, you really don't get to anything. In addition, there seems to be this fallacy out there that thinking about something yields action, right? And again, why do we have distinct words like thinking, communication, and action? If thinking is being an action, why would we need two words for it? Then it would all just be thinking. So there's this misnomer that if I think enough, I'll know what the right action to take is, except what that usually yields is a mentality in a someday type of mentality. So I'll keep thinking about it, and someday I'll take action on it. Now, the issue with this someday mentality is that often someday turns into some decades, and then like 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years go by, and people still don't take that action. And it's like they're waiting for enough information to come through, and there's having the right thought, and then like the perfect circumstance will come along. And then finally, when all that lines up and I win the lottery, like that's when I'll be happy, or that's when I'll do this, or start a business, or be in a perfect relationship, or all these things that we make excuses of to just relegate ourselves to exactly where we already are, and we don't make any progress. So I really want you to consider that thinking is just thinking. And thinking likes to think about thinking, which is even stranger. You can think about your thoughts, which aren't even your thoughts at all. It's just this mechanism in the mind that keeps talking to you that you've mistaken for thinking. And now you're having thoughts about thinking, which just puts you into more of a feedback loop about thinking. And then you don't take any action, and then nothing changes. So you could say that without action, really nothing changes. Now, the issues, the problems, whatever, however you phrase it for yourself, I have a problem, I have an issue, I have this, I have that, that keeps coming back into your life over and over again, like repeat, like you feel like you're on the hamster wheel with it. I'm going to assert that area of life, you're making it wrong, okay? So if you have some health issue, I'm going to assert you're probably making that health issue wrong. If your relationship with your husband, wife, significant other, brother, sister, mother, father isn't working, I'm going to assert you're making that person wrong. Okay? If you can hear me, I'm just waiting for the internet to pop back on. Okay, cool. Right? So I'm going to assert that you're making that person wrong, or that situation wrong, health wrong, your finances wrong, something is wrong in this picture. Now, the function of making something wrong, or the design of what happens when you make something wrong, is that it's like a boomerang. It keeps coming back around over and over again, okay? And this is a really good thing to write down or note for yourself. If you keep having the experience of something coming around over and over again, ask yourself, am I making this thing wrong? And I imagine you will find that you are. You have some story about it, whether it's about yourself or somebody else or a situation, that you're making that wrong. And the function of that, unfortunately, is you creating a feedback loop of it coming around over and over again. Okay? So that's a really, really good thing to note. Neen says she lost me. Tell me where you lost me, Neen. Is everybody else tracking me? Okay, you're not tracking me. Got it. Tell me where exactly you lost me, and I'll come back around to it again, if you can. Otherwise, I'll go back and just restate that. Is anybody clear on what I said, or is everyone completely lost right now? Oh, okay. Oh, you lost me as in the internet connection, or are you tracking the conversation though? Just making sure everyone's in the conversation. All right, so I'll presume that it was the internet connection, but either way, I want to restate what I'm saying, okay? So internet connection lost out. Got it. Okay, great. So just to reiterate, so the design of thinking, right, is a recall from the past. And then the next part I was saying is whatever area of life or relationship, whatever is not working for you right now, my assertion is that you're making that thing wrong. So if your relationship with your father, your mother, your sibling, your spouse, your sister, your work partner, people at work, whatever it is, if something is not working for you, I assert you're making it wrong. And what happens when you make something wrong is it creates a feedback loop. And that feedback loop just keeps coming back around over and over again. We all experience this. Like you go to a new workspace, it's like you have the same type of job. If you're dating, it's like you keep dating the same person over and over again, no matter how many times you go on dates, right? And there's something that you're making wrong about men or about women or about your health or about your finances. And when it's not working the way that you think it should, we naturally seem to make it wrong. Now, again, the function or what ends up being the design of making stuff wrong is that it just keeps coming back around over and over again. Okay, does that make sense to you guys? You with me? Cool, great. So you guys are tracking me now. Perfect. All right, so if that's happening for you, what I'm gonna offer is that what's missing, and we're gonna do some deep work on this in just a minute, but what's missing is getting in communication. That's it. That's all that's missing. And as far as I can tell, the design of communication has two properties. So we're thinking is just a recall from the past, right? I'm going to just keep reiterating this stuff because I want to get it in. We're thinking is just a recall from the past. When things aren't working, it's because we're making them wrong. And then we keep making them wrong. And the other thing I just said about making it wrong, by the way, is that you're making wrong your problem, right? So if you're making that problem wrong, like if Neen has an issue with her finances, and then somebody else is in the same situation as Neen, while Neen might be focusing on that thing, thinking about it, and making it wrong, for a different person out there who might be in the same financial situation as them, they might not be thinking about it. They might not be making it wrong at all. They have no issues with that area of life, right? So our problems are relevant only to us, and that all happens in this world of thinking and making it wrong. Now, once you learn that you make something wrong, the way out of the trap is to get in communication. Now, most people think that talking is being in communication, which is a really different thing than what I'm talking about here. And we're going to talk about this in great detail, but I want to offer you that the properties of communication has two properties. One is to make things disappear, and the other one is to generate them into reality. Communication is a super, super powerful tool, and most humans don't really think about the fact. We'll get there, Matthew, I promise you. Most people don't take into consideration the power of word, okay? When I say word is communication, communication is word, and that it actually has generative properties. I say this all the time. I'm not a religious person in the traditional sense, and the first words in the Bible are, "And God spoke," right? As if the world came into being when God spoke. And I actually always say that I feel like the word and the word world are really closely related, as you know, I think it's one letter difference, right? From doing my lettering right here. Word and world, it's an L difference between the two. Why are those words so closely related to one another in the English language? It's because you're constantly generating with your word worlds. So when you start speaking about something, right, like it's an issue, you're literally creating that issue. It's coming out of you, and you're self-generating that. In the same token, you can get in communication with people in the areas of life that are not working. You'll notice that where things are not working, you're not in communication about it. You tend to hide those things. So if like you had some argument with your husband and now you're making him wrong, there's all this stuff you're doing in your mind about making him wrong. And what you're probably not doing is getting in communication with him. And vice versa, he's probably doing that with you, right? And because of that, you don't get in communication with one another. That thing just lingers there and it doesn't disappear. The moment you get in communication, that thing would disappear. There would be space for something new. And now you can get in communication about what you want to create in that space. And we're going to talk about how to do that today. Okay, so even if you don't know exactly what I'm talking about, you guys get at least a sense of what I'm talking about? So Jerry says properties of communication to make things disappear and to make it a reality. Have I got that right? You could say that the properties are to make things disappear and to generate things. So it has a generative property, like it auto-generates into reality things. By the way, we can back this up with scientific studies everywhere. There are all these studies that show, yeah, you got it. There's all these studies that show that if you take a color palette, okay, like literally take a color palette of, let's say, different shades of blue. And I just heard another study in a book I was reading the other day about this, but I'll just use this example. If you take a color palette of like different shades of blue, and let's say there are 30 shades of blue, as an American, you can sit me down in front of those 30 shades of blue, and you can ask me to identify how many shades I can see, literally with my eyes. Now, American might see like 15, 17 different shades of blue. If you were to take a person of Russian descent and sit them down in front of the same color blue palettes, they would see 25 to 30 different shades of blue. And the reason for that is inside the Russian language, there is significantly more descriptive language for the different shades of colors than we do have in English, which means for the physical eye, literally the physical eye cannot see what you can't communicate about. So it's not like as if they can't identify because they don't have words for it. They literally cannot see it. The other study I saw was they found some tribe in like South America or something like that, that didn't have a word for the color green or blue or something like that. And they would go down there and they would test them, and they would show them like a piece of paper that had all these green boxes on it with like one blue box in the middle that was like clearly blue. And they would say like, show us the box that doesn't fit. And they literally cannot see the box on the piece of paper that does not fit. Like they just can't see it. Okay. So this is kind of how things work for us also. The things that we communicate about, they literally feedback loop our reality, and that's the reality that we see. Now, most people have communication and complaining collapsed, because what they're really doing with communication is they're using it as a complaint. And they keep complaining about the things that they don't want. And that complaint is you communicating more of that complaint, which means the more you complain about it, the more you're actually creating the complaint. And the more you're creating that problem in your physical reality. If you would stop complaining about that thing, and the way that you really want to stop complaining about that thing is getting things in communication so that they disappear, you will find that that problem suddenly seems to just disappear. And suddenly there's this whole new space in life, and this kind of like freedom opens up, like you can feel it, and you can just start generating things in that space. So again, this is all stuff I just want to like share about. It's kind of like in the realm of what we're going to talk about. So again, if this is not all perfectly clear to you, don't worry so much, okay? Just yet. And obviously, if you have questions, please write them down. Let me know. So here's what I want to talk to you guys about. The human brain has an interesting phenomenon. And what ends up happening to all humans, it seems, is that at some age, fairly young, we experience a trauma event. Most people remember trauma events from school, like raising their hand really enthusiastically, thinking they know an answer to something, raising their hand, saying the wrong answer, and having the classroom laugh at them, or like something that happens that's very embarrassing, or that threatens your survival in some way or your safety. All different kinds of things happen to people, and this becomes like a significant trauma event in our life. And anytime there's a trauma event in our life, our brain automatically goes to work on survival, because that's what the brain is built for. It's a survival tool. So it starts thinking about ways to survive it, and the brain comes up with an interpretation in that moment to help you survive the moment. Now, this trauma event is so strong that it starts creating and wiring a specific reality into your physical reality. And the next thing the brain does is it needs to be sure of that reality. So it starts finding evidence for it in your life, okay? So, where before you might have been like really super carefree and like giving answers to everything. Suddenly this trauma event happens. You create some version of like, I'm dumb, because it's usually very simple language. Like, I'm stupid, I'm dumb, no one likes me. Like it's not going to be like, I'm unworthy and people don't respect me. Like a little kid doesn't think that way. So it starts with a really simple idea. And then what ends up happening, you just start going through school, and every time there's a little bit of a failure, it reinvigorates the idea of I'm dumb. And then that just kind of carries on. And there's usually about 2 or 3 of these like mega trauma events that happen throughout our, like some in like our teenage years, a little bit later in adolescence. And this is kind of how it goes. And every time there's a trauma event, it's a lot like this. It's like putting on a pair of sunglasses, right? And if you've ever, I'm sure you've all put on a pair of sunglasses. I was going to say if you've ever, but I imagine you have. If you put on a pair of sunglasses like these, you know that when you first put them on, it's really obvious that the shade in the room has changed, right? But if I keep these sunglasses on for just a few minutes, my brain will take this reality and just start mapping it onto the brain, and it will start becoming the way things are. That's why oftentimes it starts to getting dark and you're like, oh yeah, I got these on, and then you take it off and the whole world looks different. And these communication patterns that I'm talking about, these trauma events, are a lot the same way. It's not what actually happened, even though like you might remember it that way. It might be exactly what happened, but again, there's study after study will show you that memories are far from significant recalls of what actually happens in reality. It's really our interpretation or somebody else's story that they told us about what happened at that time that we take as our own. And it's just like that. It's just this shade that gets put over our eyes, but given enough time, it stops looking at shade and just becomes the way that it is. So the exercise I'm going to take you through today is to give you access to taking off the glasses, because you can't step into a different world if you're so sure that the world is some way and you're some way in that world and people are a certain way in that world. And by the way, all this is tied into your identity. And there is no way, I'm telling you right now, as far as I can tell, there is no way to overcome the identity. What you can do though, is you can put consciousness onto things so that you can see them happening. And because you see them happening, what this gives you access to is a choice that you're not aware of. And when you start choosing things differently, you will find that you start taking different actions and then the results change. Generally speaking, people are so on autopilot that something happens and they don't choose what's actually happening, even though that's what they think they're doing. They just go into autopilot mode. They do perform the same function. It's like a robot that's like, the software program runs, you run the software program, you do that thing, you say that thing, you make that thing happen, and then the result happens the same way. And you guys know this, because if you've been married for a while or you've been at the job, you know, like I go say this to Bill, Bill says this, I react, boom, he reacts, boom, and then like, you know, this whole thing like unravels, and you kind of know your own patterns. You know the genealogy of how this stuff starts, you know all of it, even if at the end of it you're like, it's their fault, I didn't do that, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, if the same thing keeps coming into your life over and over again, you might want to consider that the reason the same thing comes into your life over and over again is because you're the common denominator in everything that's happening. And I want to give you access to this, not only to take the glasses off, but to put you in the driver's seat of your life so that you see that you're responsible for what's actually happening. And that's the good news, because if you're responsible for what's happening, it means you can take actions consistent with altering the way that things are going to occur for you. And that means you're going to take different actions, and that means you're going to get different results. And that's really what we're looking for. So to go back to these trauma events, this happens so seamlessly in the brain that we can't actually tell the difference between what actually happened during the event and that which we create about what happened during the event. So we have some interpretation about what happened during that event, and there's a complete collapse of these two worlds immediately, and we literally can't see the difference between our interpretation and reality. And the worst part of it is that we don't live reality, we live the interpretation. So the story becomes more real than what actually happened in reality. I want to tell you a super quick story, and then I'm going to tell you my story also. I worked with a woman one time who could not get into a proper relationship with a man. Every time she would get into one and got close, something would sabotage, and she couldn't figure out what the hell was going on. And I think by the time I met her, she was about 42 years old, and this was like a consistent pattern, like endlessly consistent pattern. So when we started inquiring about it, we usually start with like the latest quote unquote failure in her relationships. And then, you know, they start describing the situation. So she described it to me, the way that it felt and what happened and all this kind of stuff. And then what we do is we say, okay, well, can you remember a time that happened before that? And it was like, all right, well, 5 years ago, blah, 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 blah. Okay, great. Because it always feels the same. And then we go, well, can you remember a time before that? And can you remember a time before that? And can you remember a time when you were a kid? And this went on for a while. And we finally get to this story. I think she was either 5 or 6 years old. And she, I think her father was watching TV. He was sitting like in a lazy boy chair. And she just wanted to show her father love. So she like runs up to her dad and she like jumps on him and like gives him this hug. And the father responds by pushing her, like pushing her away. And that's what she remembers. She remembers her father pushing her away. And her world, it was her father rejecting her. So we did some work on this. We uncovered the story. And here's the thing, right? Like, so in her world, what that meant is my dad rejected me, or I'm unloved, some version of that, right? That's what she created as this like figment of her imagination kind of interpretation. In reality, what happened is her father pushed her. Really, that's what happened, right? Like in actual reality, dad pushed her. So she went and had a conversation with her father because she's now been making her dad wrong for 36 years about the event where he pushed her. Okay, so thinking about it, trying to figure out how to get over it, trying to figure out why her relationships aren't working, making him wrong, right? All the things that we talked about. And I said, you got to go get in communication with your dad. And you got to get this cleaned up so it can disappear. So she goes to talk with her father, and she tells him, hey, Dad, blah, blah, blah. Do you remember when this happened? And of course, he doesn't remember the event. Of course, they never remember the event, by the way. Only you remember the event. And she goes through this whole thing, and she tells him, well, you know, that happened, and it's had this kind of impact on me. And I see that what really happened is, like, you were pushing me. And he goes, well, I have one better for you. He goes, if I did do that, which I could see myself doing that, I don't remember doing it. He says, but let me tell you a little bit story about myself. And he ends up telling her that when he was young, about her age, his father used to abuse him. I don't remember if it was physical or sexual abuse, but he used to abuse him. And in his world, he had decided when he became a father that he would never be that kind of father, and that he would always protect his children. And in that moment, when he pushed her away, that was an automated response of him protecting his child, because he never wanted to be a father like his father, and he was afraid that by his kids getting close to something like that could ever happen. So in his world, he was protecting his daughter. In her world, his daddy doesn't love me, right? And there's an impact from that. So they get that cleaned up. And once they get in communication about it, disappears. I believe by the end of the program, she had met the man she was going to marry, right? It's like that quick, because suddenly there's space for something that wasn't there before. Something becomes possible that wasn't there before. Another quick story, I had a student who also, something about relationships. I don't remember exactly what, and I don't want to get into all the logistics, but I remember when we got down to the original trauma moment, she was like 3 or 4 years old. She was eating Jelly Bellies at like some dinner with her parents. And she had a little baby brother who was like 1.5 years old, like kind of leaning back in the crib. And she was enjoying her Jelly Bellies, and she thought her brother would need one too. And you know what, with her, she was depressed, like really depressed. And this had gone on for a really long period of time. And what ended up happening in that moment is she took a Jelly Belly, and she wanted her little brother to enjoy it also. And she put it in his mouth, and the child started choking. And they obviously like pushed her out of the way and like pulled this thing out of the kid, and the kid is fine. But in that traumatic moment, she created like, I'm no good, or I'm bad, right? Or some variation of that. And then, 30, 40 years later, what you get is somebody who's developed 30, 40 years of evidence of I'm bad. What does that look like when you're an adult, especially when you can't remember that you put the sunglasses on? When all in reality happened is she put a Jelly Belly in her brother's mouth, right? So on this piece of paper that you have in front of you, let me just pull this up here real quick. Here's what I want you to do, and then I'm going to tell you my story and how this has impacted my life. So you're going to just do something like this. And then what I want you to put on one side, I want you to put like, in reality, what happened, okay? And we're specifically talking about this area of life that you guys are dealing with right now. So we can start, like I said, with whenever is the last time you felt like you failed the most in this area. That's what we're going to do. And we're going to distinguish what's actually happened, and then we're going to distinguish this, like your interpretation. So my interpretation, or you can say your story, right, of what happened. Either one works. How do we find this trauma event? Sorry, so Matthew's asking about the trauma event. So it's the easiest to start with the most recent time you felt that way, right? Because I know that whatever's happening, it's not like it's happened once. Like if you've had an issue with your health or your finances, it's not like that started today and you suddenly have like a problem with your finances and it's like, oh, this is new. Like, oh my God, look at this new problem I have. If it was new, it would be exciting. Since it's old and never seems to go away, it's like, oh my God, this again. So if it's like that, oh my God, this again, whatever is the most earliest thing that you can think of with it, let's start there. If you can remember it like all the way back, great, go all the way back. But what the exercise you can do when you get off this webinar today is you can start looking at events that are similar to this event that we're going to distinguish today, and just keep going back, like I said. Be like, oh, when's the time that's happened before? When did I feel like this beforehand? Okay, yeah, I remember 5 years ago, blah, 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 blah. And then it's like, what happened before? And just see how far you can get back. Is it important to get to the original trauma event? A lot of psychology will say it is. I think it's actually very effective to go there. But in the grand scheme of things, what's more important than anything is distinguishing the interpretation. Is just seeing that you've created an interpretation of what's happening and that you're living into the interpretation, okay? So I'm going to give you my story to kind of, so Anna's saying she's finding it very difficult to go back to her early years, remembering exactly which episode triggered this whole thing. So that's what I'm saying. That's not important. I don't want you guys to get stuck on that. If you can't remember like the original trauma moment, that you can't get value from this. Start with something that happened recently or something you can remember a few years ago. It doesn't matter. Ultimately, the reason it doesn't matter is because it's the same thing that's been going on over and over again. I think the original trauma event does give access to people to kind of having these cathartic moments around it, which is fine. And look, as you guys put this into your conscious mind, your mind is going to go to work and it just starts, your mind works in reverse. Like when you look at an object like this, if you really pay attention to your mind, that's not a very distinct object. When you look at like an object like this, your brain actually goes and reverse patterns every time it ever saw a cup. If you really pay attention, you'll notice that your mind like starts jogging through memories of cups. That's why like you'll be sitting around and you'll randomly have these like strange memories about things. Because guess what? Like something that in the room, a smell, whatever, just like triggered, right? Like triggered this thing to pop up again. What happened to my writing here? Let me see if I can bring that back. Oh. Okay. Oh. I don't really know why it's doing what it's doing. All right, there we go. Cool. All right, so there we go. So I'm going to tell you guys a story, and this is a super personal story for me. I want you to get the power of this, because for a lot of you guys, you know who I am right now, you know what I've become or who I am, blah, blah, blah. You see the things that my brother and I achieve, and maybe you look up to us, whatever. And I remember doing stuff like that too. I think it's actually really important to take people off pedestals and just see the humanity that we all are. We're all literally, all of us are literally dealing with being human. And there's, again, a design to being human and things that we all are innately dealing with. So it doesn't matter what you see that we've created, we've invented, what we're doing, what we can create results, or anybody else for that matter. Know that no matter how quote unquote successful somebody is, they're still dealing with the same shit as you. Doesn't matter if they have $1 billion in the bank, maybe their problems are different, but they're still focusing on something that's creating some kind of issue in their life, and you could relate to that problem, I promise you. So here's my story. When I was younger, like for me too, I don't actually remember the exact trauma event that set this off, but I do remember what catalyzed it. From about the age of 12 to about the age of 19, I dealt with some pretty heavy depression, okay? And not like light depression, like heavy depression. So I was really depressed. It showed up like anger all the time, and I eventually led me to suicide, or like extremely suicidal thoughts, and like actually like attempting to end my life a few times. The reason I didn't actually ever go through with suicide attempts is I was actually raised in a super loving family. Never felt like, I wasn't wanted or anything like that. However, something along the way had happened to me. I created some interpretation of life, and I consistently thought about ending my life. Now, I didn't go through with it because I really did love my family, and I really knew that they loved me, and I was very much aware of the selfish act it would be to end my life, even though that was like a top priority for me. So my life was based around thinking about ways that my life could end, that I wouldn't be the one responsible for ending it, because that's really what I wanted. So I would have awful thoughts in the morning about like getting hit by a bus or like falling off of something, whatever. And I had hoped that some incident would happen that would end my life, so that it would just be like, oh, this tragic event happened and I could leave this plane of reality. And that's the world that I lived in for a long period of time. So I'm not saying this to depress you, but I just want you to understand the gravity of what I was living with, right? And again, I don't remember the exact moment where these kind of things started, but I do remember where it like exploded into being something. So I'm approximately 13 years old. At the time, I was living in northern New Jersey in a town called Fair Lawn. It's about 15 minutes outside New York City, so just south of Manhattan. And we lived in this house, and I actually shared a backyard with my best friend. His name is Jake. And Jake's father's name is Kenny. And outside of my own father, Kenny was probably the most influential adult figure in my life. Kenny was my soccer coach. He drove us to school every day. Obviously, I would spend a lot of time at my best friend's house, stuff like that. And Kenny was this prominent adult figure in my life, someone I really looked up to. When Kenny turned 40, Kenny started battling with cancer. I don't remember exactly what kind of cancer, but I remember it was fairly aggressive. And I don't really think I understood the concept of cancer at the time, or really anything about life and death, like in a true meaningful way at that time. And what I remember is that there was a party for him, and the party must have been because he had beaten the cancer. And what I specifically remember is the band in the backyard, and then playing like, rock music, because Kenny was this amazing person who knew everything about rock music. There was a radio show, I remember, where they used to say, like, name that tune, and they would play like 1 to 4 notes. And for like the first note, he would always know exactly what song it was, which always was amazing to hear. Anyway, so Kenny's this incredible guy, and he ends up beating cancer. A few months later, out of all places, this might make you laugh, in AOL, America Online chat room, if you guys are not from the States, maybe you don't know what AOL is, but AOL was like what started the internet in America. And there used to be these chat rooms. And me and a bunch of my friends went into a chat room, and somehow this conversation got out of control. And I said something about my friend Jake that wasn't nice in his interpretation, and he stopped talking to me. And my best friend just like fell off the map, and we just didn't communicate anymore for like months. Now in my family, we would do a lot of physical labor. So I grew up in kind of like an immigrant, poorish type family. And that meant we just did a lot of stuff around the house. Like we would clean up the yard, stuff like that. So that was pretty regular for my weekends, was to do a lot of physical labor. And I remember I was in the front yard, like watering bushes or the grass or something. And out of the corner of my eye, I see Jake walking down my street. And with him is this old man, this like old hunched over man. And I remember like double taking like this, because I suddenly had recognized that the old man that he's walking with was his father. And looking back at it now, what must have happened is his father relapsed, the cancer relapsed, and it must have been extremely aggressive. And instead of looking like a very healthy 40-year-old man, Kenny looked like he was in his late 60s, 70s. He was like hunched over, and how with the hair, how it looks, and his skin was yellow. I've been told that's from liver failure and stuff like that. And he just didn't look good. And they walked by, and I remember kind of like awkwardly saying hello to them and just feeling a lot of shame about the whole situation. And we still don't talk, right, during this whole situation. So shortly thereafter, Kenny dies, passes away. I end up finding out from my brother the day after the funeral. Well, I missed the funeral, and I found out like, basically after the funeral had happened, that this happened. And at his house, there was everyone coming over to like, give him, console him and all that kind of stuff. And I'm sure he was in shambles. And my parents told me to go over there and say something. And like all the embarrassment of it comes up. And of course I go over there. We kind of had this moment of embrace. And I just remember feeling like shit about the whole situation. Now, what I remember specifically about that moment is whatever relationship I had with God at that point in time, that's gone. Because what I remember clearly thinking and saying over and over to myself at that time is that bad things happen to good people. I like legitimately, clearly, very clearly remember starting to think that is the way that the world is. And if your interpretation of the world, right, the Paris time glasses that you put on is bad things happen to good people, and you think you're a good person, what starts happening to you? Right? Bad things. So it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Now, everything that happened in my life thereafter that didn't go the way that I thought that it should was now evidence for that I'm a bad person, I don't belong here, and that like I could tell you like a few years down the road, I would literally have thoughts like, I'm God's unwanted child, I'm the black sheep of the earth, I'm here as like this plaything, and if that's what my job is on this planet, I am not interested in being here at all. And that's what led me down this path. I remember blaming things on my depression and then not wanting to be caught in the lie. And then it didn't occur to me like a lie, but it's like I didn't want to be caught in that my story, like the stories that I was making up, stuff like something bad happened at school or I didn't get a grade and my parents were yelling at me. I'd say things like, I'm already depressed, like you're making it worse. And then of course, like to not be found out, I would have to just act more depressed. And it's like, you just keep getting into that habit, it just creates the whole world of this thing. And this is what we all do, right? And none of us want to get found out. So like when a lot of people, right, use extravagant language and they lie a lot and they try to bolster their ego and stuff like that and all these different things. And now something you should know about humans is it's really important for us to look good. So if we get caught in a lie, that doesn't look very good. So in order to not get caught, we start living the lie as if it's the truth, because heaven forbid we get caught and that looks bad. And that was kind of my world. So if you fast forward, 6-7 years, it's just becoming very clear, like, how this whole world gets formed. And this happens to a lot of people. And I've worked with a lot of people who are depressed, and it's kind of the same thing for everybody. It's like the ultimate victim mentality, right? And you use it to blame everything and everyone in every situation for what you're going through. And it's really nasty to be inside of, and it's very difficult to get out of. So fast forward a few years, I go to college and I'm a sophomore at school, and I'll make the story a little bit shorter for the essence of time. But an event happens and my symptoms start becoming physical in such a way that it scares me. And up until that point, my parents probably became aware of the problem around 16 or 17, and they started offering me to go to psychologists. But in my worldview, everybody else looked happy. I was the miserable one. Like, everybody else had figured something out that I didn't understand, and I felt dumb because of it. So I was like, wait, I don't want somebody's help to tell me what it is. I'm like, am I really that stupid that I can't figure this out on my own? So I would always evade and like not want to get any kind of help from anybody. But when these physical ailments start happening, I could clearly attribute what was happening in my body to the way that I was feeling. And that scared me for the first time. So I had found out about this class from my mom about a year before from one of her friends. And I decided that I was going to go and take this class. And they did a similar exercise with me that I'm doing with you guys here. And they kind of started telling me about this, like this, what happened and the story. And for me, there wasn't like another reality. Like in my reality, everything was shit, right? So they start telling the story, and it was about the second day of the course. And I had this 15-minute walk back to the subway. I was living in Boston at the time. So I had this like 15-minute walk back to the subway or underground, whatever you call it. And on that walk back, like I remember the whole day, this story about Kenny was just right there for me. Like it was so clear for me. And I started thinking to myself, could it be that I made this whole thing up? Because in reality, this is what I realized during this walk. In reality, here's what happened. Kenny died, right? My interpretation, bad things happen to good people, right? And all the laundry list of things that came after that. So before this work, if you would have come up to me and told me that things in this reality were not this way, I would have laughed. I'd probably told you to go fuck yourself. And I would have said, hey, I got like a volume of evidence on this. Don't tell me it's not the way things are. And this is what I see everybody doing. We've collected evidence to make our story true. That doesn't make your story true, though. It's still a story. So the truth is that Kenny died, and I was walking down the stairs of the subway, and this became so clear to me that it created instant transformation. I literally felt like a bolt of lightning hit me. Like I can tell you what it looked like, what it smelled in that moment, everything. It was like this very clear, distinct moment. And I remember my right foot coming off the second stair from the top. And by the time my right foot hit the third step, I was a completely different human being. Like, I don't remember smiling during those years. I really don't actually remember seeing blue sky or sun during those years. I don't remember seeing trees very much. And I got on that subway and I was literally like this. I was just shaking because it had become so clear to me that I made this whole thing up and that I had a choice to let the story go. And I did in that exact moment. That's exactly what happened to me. And I was just vibrating. And it felt like 50 pounds fell off me, not even off me. I felt like I had a noose around my neck with a chain, and there was a boulder, and I was carrying around this boulder about this interpretation that I had. And in that moment, I was just like, I'm going to give that up. And it all just fell behind me. Now, when that fell away, that created space for something, because inside that story, something is not possible about who I am, who people are, who I am in this world, or anything else like that. But the moment that interpretation is gone, it's like there is just space, right? So if you're trying to create right now something in your life and there's an issue, there's this interpretation, there's this problem, trying to put something else in there is like trying to put two things in the same space. Two things can't occupy the same space at the same time. When you do exercises like this, what it does is it disappears that interpretation, and then you have room to create a new story of your choosing now that goes in that place that can empower you. This story, right, the one that's on the screen, not very empowering. You guys get that? That's a shitty story. And there's a whole world, a whole paradigm that's created because of interpretations like these. And this is what the human race is doing right now, unconsciously for the most part, for people who have not done work like this, is you just are littered with stories that happened to you, not because you chose them, because circumstances happened and a traumatized kid made decisions about the way things are. And for the last who knows how many decades, you've been looking for evidence to make those stories true, and you live them as if they are, and they run the show. And then you wonder why you can't get your finances handled, or why you can't get the relationship of your dreams, or why your business is not taking off, or why. And then you keep dealing with the non-reality, which gives you no power, and you keep trying to invent on top of it. So trying to invent on top of this stuff, like, I want you to imagine, like, if I had a tinfoil that holds pies in it, or like a pie, like I was gonna bake a pie, and inside the tinfoil there's just shit. And this is the shit right here. And then I try to like come around and start doing all this positive thinking stuff and chanting and all this kind of stuff. And by the way, there's reasons that that stuff does work. But what gets in the way of it really working for you is that that's like whipped cream, right? All that stuff is whipped cream, and it's really effective when you know how to use it. But positive thinking is like putting whipped cream on a shit pie. If the shit is still there, I don't care how much whipped cream you put on top of shit, it still tastes like shit. So the work that we're looking at here is about how to release and choose to get rid of that stuff, so that when you do the other work, you know, like all the meditation, the chanting and stuff like that, it starts becoming effective, and you start realizing how much power you really have to co-create this reality for yourself. And I say co-create because, you know, whatever eternal source you believe in, whether it's energy, God, Krishna, Jesus, I don't care what your belief system is. I believe you're in partnership with that energy. So you do have this ability, and I have seen this at work in my life for 14 straight years. But it takes and requires doing a process like this so that you actually get that space back, and then you can use communication, like we said, to both disappear and create. So in that moment, I chose something that had this disappear, and then I chose a new future for myself that I started auto-generating. So up until then, it was like I had this book, right, with all this kind of stuff written in it. And basically what it gave me was, this is what I saw afterwards, just a blank empty space, and I just started being able to write. And most people believe that who we are in the present moment is a function of our past, right? You'll tell me things like the books I've read, the religion I was part of or raised in, what my parents told me, what my friends were, the books I read, the TV shows I watched, like all that stuff from the past has given me who I am in the present moment, when the actual truth is who we are, or a way of looking at it, not the truth. The way of looking at it is who we are in the present moment is a function of our future. And that really is what's at play in my assertion, because if you look at when you go on vacation, for instance, right? You buy a ticket to go on vacation, or you buy a ticket to come to our event, or you buy a ticket for anything. You just say yes to something. You're immediately called to action by that yes. So for instance, like if I'm going to go on vacation to Hawaii or something like that, right? Let's say that vacation is 3 months from now. The moment I say yes to that vacation, I'm called into that future. I'm going to start doing things like eating healthy, probably start losing some weight, maybe go clothes shopping. Like there's all these actions I'm going to take consistent with the future that's coming, okay? And that's really what's at play. We're actually constantly interacting with the future that we're expecting, not so much with our past. But the reason it looks like our past is constantly in the way, because things like this happen, like what I'm talking to you about here, and this interpretation that actually happened decades ago, right? What you do is you misfile it and you put it into your future. And then from your present moment, you start living into it over and over again. The hamster wheel effect that so many people deal with, like still have that same issue and over again, it's the mind puts it there. And then you start living into that future over and over again, and you're constantly taking actions consistent with that expectation. The moment you choose and let that disappear, or get in communication with that person and let that disappear, whatever it is, Now there's nothing sitting out there in your future anymore. That interpretation is gone, and now you get to use communication to auto-generate what goes into the future, and you actually choose and say, yep, that's who I want to be. Yep, that's what I'm creating myself to be. And you'll find that the same thing happens, that who you are in the present moment is immediately impacted by that future that you're creating. And that phenomenon can work over and over again. And the more areas of life that you're willing to do this on, the more power you'll start having in terms of your belief in creation, right? And what ends up happening is that action always moves things. Action creates reaction, right? So the more you take actions consistent with the new future, you'll find, whoa, I took that action, whoa, I got a completely different result than I'm used to. The more you get that kind of result, the more you believe in this process. The more you believe in this process, the more actions you take. The more actions you take, the more results you get. The more results you get, the more belief you have. And it becomes this cyclical thing where you start finding out how powerful you actually are, right? And this is the kind of work that we do with people when we coach them. This is the kind of work we're going to do at our live event. This is the kind of work that literally pulled my ass out of depression, took me out of a fixed mindset, made me a person who can lead people, who can articulate and communicate well, who people follow, right? Like all these different things that you guys see today is a function literally of this story disappearing and me speaking into a future who I was going to become. And who I am today is the person that keeps speaking that future into existence. And that's why, like, sometimes you'll watch Elon and I do things and you're like, how the hell did they do that now? It's just this process over and over again. That's all we do. Consistently looking at what are we making wrong? How do we get in communication about that? How do we disappear it? And now what do we say to create a new future for ourselves? Okay? So tonight, I would take 5 to 10 minutes for those of you guys who aren't clear about it yet, and look for this area of life and start distinguishing as much as you can about this stuff for yourself. And you will find by creating these distinctions, your mind is going to go to work on this stuff for you. You might not get the answer tonight, but even tomorrow you might wake up and be like, whoa, holy crap, I could see it. I could see it at work. I could see it with my relationships. I could see it in my health. I could see it in my finances. And notice, that's the most important part, notice that your interpretation, it really is just a story, okay? All right, so let me see, just see what you guys are talking about here real quick. Awesome, 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 awesome. All right, so Matthew says he had a girlfriend, she had heavy depression, and she wants to jump from the 12th floor, but I saved her and helped her to go find help, but after her health was better, we went different paths of life, but it was a big impact on my life, but then David helped me change the glasses, and then we started our adventure. Awesome, cool. There's Anonymous here, so I'll read that, but I'm not sure who Anonymous is. It says, what if you feel like you've been in communication and your partner continues to do what upsets and even hurts you? My husband berates and annoys me, tickles and touches me inappropriately, and yes, I do think about it all the time and hate him for it. He said it because he loves me. He says it because he loves me. I'm trying to own it and openly communicate to him. I need him to stop this as I feel violated and doesn't show me love for me. He continues to do it. I want to stop thinking about it and tell myself how much I love him. My question is, what do I do the next time he does this? Do I just succumb and giggle and let him do it? It's a really big problem for me. I honestly do not like it. And yes, it does take me back to something that happened to me years ago by a boy in grade 6 who forced a kiss on me playing spin the bottle. It's a vicious cycle. I totally get it. I would actually, look, that's a conversation I'd like to have with you, not in a webinar setting. Again, I don't know who it is, so I'll do my best. I imagine, right, like in these type of scenarios, I know it seems like we're communicating to the person. I want you to look for yourself whether, and I'm just looking for you because you can't change people. Do you guys get that? Let me just close this real quick. I know people attempt it all the time, like changing people and the way that they are. People are the way that they are unless they really want to transform themselves, right? And for those of you guys who are playing the transformation game and that your partner or spouse isn't playing it with you, guess what? You can't make them wrong for that. They're not choosing that path, you are. So the transformation game has a lot to do with taking responsibility for everything. And a lot of people don't know how to forgive things. And that's not what I'm offering, by the way. So I want you to just stay with me here. When people do inappropriate things like sexual abuse and stuff like that, I don't condone those actions, right? Like, not cool with me. However, for people that I've known that have been in those situations, I've never seen anybody work through it without the ability to forgive, usually themselves first. Usually they haven't forgiven themselves, because young kids, when stuff like that happens to them, they don't blame the adult, they blame themselves. Secondly, to forgive the other person. Now, a lot of people collapse, again, collapse distinctions, they collapse forgiving with condoning, and those are not the same things. You can be completely against an action and still forgive the action. That's called compassion, right? So I would offer, at least for you to look, and I'm not saying it's the truth, it's just places to look. Are you trying to communicate to your husband, or are you complaining about what he's doing? If you're complaining to him about what he's doing, then that's all he hears is the complaint. There's no communication there at all. And it's really important to distinguish between sharing and complaining. Complaining keeps things in place, guaranteed. And it's a really subtle shift. But if you were like sharing with me, I would listen for, are you sharing about your husband right now, or are you complaining about your husband? And if you're complaining about him, I would have you keep speaking it to me until you're sharing it. Sharing is with the intent of letting go this belief system, right? So there's some way that he is that you're making wrong, and there's some communication that's not getting through, that's not altering the occurring in the relationship. And that's why I know that like there hasn't been real communication here, guaranteed. Okay, it might be interesting for you. And by the way, you can email me about this if you want to have a conversation about it. It might be interesting for you to go back, because if that brings up that event every single time, I totally get that. By the way, I think everybody gets that. I get a ringing in my right ear once every so often out of the blue, and every single time my ear rings, I remember my mom slapping me in the face when I was 4 years old. Every single time, and my ear starting to ring after that slap. So I can't hear that ring without seeing my mom slapping me. It's just like Pavlov's dog, right? So if every time he touches you, you remember this event from 6th grade, I would do this work on it. What actually happened in reality, and what did you make that mean about him? So I'm going to give you the whole thing right now. Here's what you can do to distinguish this, and you guys can all write this down. So here are a few questions you want to ask yourself. The first question is, it's like, what am I pretending? And what that really answering, what that's really answering is, what's my story? So your story is always like, you made that up, right? So it's what you're pretending. So what am I pretending is question number one. Is the first thing you want to write. The second thing you want to write is, what is the truth? So that's like in reality, what happened. Third thing is what's the impact on me? So like living into that story, what's the impact on me? And then on opposite that is living into that story, what's the impact on them? Okay. Now, usually I would take you through an exercise here to look at what was missing. What's missing that would make a difference for you? So like in this relationship with your husband, you might want to inquire into, so what is missing for you that if it was present, it would make a difference in your relationship with your husband? And generally speaking, when I talk about what's missing, I'm not talking about like a fix. It's not how do we fix this, because in the world of fix, that means you're going to do more, better, or different of something. And what that's going to give you is more, better, different of the same results you already have. So when I'm talking about what's missing, it's always stated not as something to do, but as a way of being, okay? So it's like if you were being compassionate, if you were being peaceful, if you were being powerful, like whatever that is, like that's what would be missing. That would make a difference for you, being that way, okay? Then you want to inquire, if you were being that way, then what would be the impact on you, and what would be the impact on them? Let me know if you want me to repeat any of that. So it's, what am I pretending? What's the truth? What's the impact on them? What's the impact on me? Looking at what's missing that would make a difference, you state that as a way of being. Again, if I was being powerful, if I was being peaceful, if I was being whatever you see for yourself. And then what's the impact on them? What's the impact on you? Okay? So if we were in a coaching session, I would help you to powerfully communicate what you need to communicate to your husband. And we would go through that exercise, and that's what you would communicate. And you guys would together create a new reality for the relationship based on what was missing. And again, it's not a fix, really, really different thing. A really, really different thing. Again, fixing is all in the world of more, better, different, and then all you get is more, better, different of the same results. Again, that's why you get that hamster wheel effect. People look for results in the world of doing, and there are no results in the world of doing. All the results you want are in the world of being. And there's some way that you're being about the way that your husband is that makes this keep going the way that it is over and over again. And this exercise over here is to have you look at how to take responsibility for your story. When you take responsibility for your story, something becomes available that wasn't available before, and that what was missing becomes the new reality that you can live into, and there's a completely different impact on people when you start living into a new story. And then really when you change, like when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change, that's exactly what would happen here. The interaction would change, or some communication would get in. It would just alter the space. Otherwise, it's just like, from what you share at least, this thing is stuck in a constant state of make wrong. And I promise you again, I don't know who wrote that. I promise you, if you were to come to spend time with us, we would get that handled. Like, promise you, handled. Okay, so my agreement was to have you guys here for about an hour. So I've been doing training for about an hour and change right now. So I want to wrap this up. And this is, again, this was not to find the answer, right? It's so you guys can start inquiring into the areas of life that are not working for you and start looking for alternate paradigms through which you can operate from. And I'm telling you, I've transformed my entire life doing the simple exercise that I just showed you over and over again. The only part we haven't gotten into is how to actually do the exercise with them. But at first, all you guys who've been in sessions with us, you know that you got to start looking at what you can take responsibility for. I've been saying this for well over a decade. If you ask me what is the capacity of the work that I do, I say it's the expanded ability to be responsible for more and more. When you look at great men and women in our history and we inquire as to how they did what they did, people like Gandhi, Mother Teresa, Martin Luther King, all those people, I'm sure people in your history, whatever country you're from, people that we adhere and look up to, if you really look at what they did, you will find most likely that what they did is they said that they will become responsible for something that other people weren't willing to be responsible for. Gandhi, I'll be responsible for my country. Martin Luther King, I'll be responsible for my people. Mother Teresa, I was going to say Martha Stewart. Wow, who cares? Mother Teresa, I'll be responsible for the poor and the meek. That was it. And then they had conversations about that with people, and people got enrolled, and that changes the world. So if those people can take responsibility for big things, you in your life taking responsibility has the same result also. But most people are so devoid of taking responsibility because they live in a world of, if I'm responsible, I'm to blame. And if you guys have been in our previous sessions, we did a whole session of our responsibility and blame are two completely different things. So I'll reiterate it. Blame is all about guilt and sorrow and shame. And if you look at yourself every time you feel guilty or you give yourself a little pity party, I promise looking at your own life, if you were to validate, you would find that when that's happened, it's created no results in your life at all. It's never moved the needle forward. And you can check that out for yourself. Where you take responsibility is your willingness and ability to say, I'm at the source of what's happening. And the moment you do that, it's like instead of just driving the car with your gas pedal and the brake, and then not touching the steering wheel, wondering why the car's crashing all the time, it's like taking full responsibility over the vehicle, putting your hands firmly on the car, and then the car, you're like, oh wow, I can actually steer this thing where I want it to go. You can do that in your life also. It just requires taking responsibility for things. But when you have it that it's all about blame, everyone's like, whoa, well, I don't want to do that. And everywhere you look in the world, that's what you see. It's just a blame model. That's how politics works. That's how families work. That's how organizations work. They're always looking for who to blame. But again, validate your own experiences. When we find the politician who did whatever he did, or this guy did that, or this guy did that, and we find who to blame, how does that change anything? Doesn't change a thing. All right, so they put him in jail. Whether they did it or not doesn't matter. Society doesn't change. Nothing changes. Right? So that's just a really ineffective way of operating. So I'm going to wrap it up with that, but here's what I want to leave you guys with, because this is important to me. Right? It's important to us. Just so you guys understand, we've changed the whole direction of our company. We've been an online marketing company, affiliate sales, XYZ, and that's still stuff we're doing in the background. But our whole company right now is in the process of rebranding. This is all SatoriPrime is doing going forward. We're a human development and empowerment company. That's it. That means live events, coaching, executive coaching, like this whole thing. So we have an event coming up in San Diego here in November. If you want this type of training, this type of coaching, and way more, right? Because we're going to get nitty gritty and personal at this training. It's going to be an intimate setting. It's in a beautiful location in San Diego on Mission Bay. It's waterfront. It's freaking gorgeous. November 3rd, 4th, and 5th is when the event's happening. You can come to this event for free. No joke, right? Like the tickets are free for you. So the way that we're doing tickets, at least until September 15th, as of right now, if you buy and reserve your seat, you can reserve one seat for $297, or you can reserve two seats for $500, even cheaper. So again, if you want to like bring your spouse, this would be a great conversation to have you guys be a part of, so you guys can both do this work individually on yourself and on the relationship. It will alter the landscape of your life, I guarantee it, okay? So if you reserve your seat, here's the deal. If you buy the ticket before September 15th and you have to attend the event, we will refund the full cost of your ticket within 7 days of the closure of the event. So I think the event will end on the 6th. So that means by November 13th, we will send everyone their money back for the full ticket price. All you have to do is make sure you attend. As soon as you buy your ticket, you also get our Mindfluence course, which is a home course. It has all these incredible distinctions that will literally radically change the way that you operate day to day, I promise you. And we have 2 seats available right now for a 4-hour private training session that's going to happen on the first day before everybody else starts their program. So our program starts on November 3rd at 6 p.m. For at least the 2 more people that buy seats right now, it's going to be about a group of 20 to 25 of us in there, I believe. And we're going to do a 4-hour training session just for that group. That's it. Nobody else gets access to that training. And we're going to do something really special during that 4-hour period, okay? So that's the event. A lot of you guys may want to come there, and you know that you want to be there, and you have some conversation like, yep, I want to be there. For those of you guys that want to be there, awesome. I can't wait to welcome you. Can't wait to see you at the event. Some of you guys are, no, I don't want to do this. Great. If that's you, then I appreciate you guys coming to spend time with us. I hope you got value today, and keep coming back. Like, come back to these. These are all free trainings. We're going to keep doing them. I love doing this stuff. And then there's like a third group of you guys who are like, yeah, I want to be there, but. And then there's this whole stuff that comes after the but. Usually what comes after the but is like, I don't have time, I don't have money, and like whatever reasons you've invented. Now I want you to look at your life, and I want you to consider that whatever is coming after that but is not new, and has probably run the show for a really, really, really long period of time. Okay? I know money and time ran the show for me for a long time. It's like, but I'm scared, but I'm this, but I'm that, but it's whatever those buts are. You know the genealogy of that but, just like you know the genealogy of the story that we talked about today. And there's an impact on your life, working your life, having that but make all the choices for you. It is a breakthrough to figure out and deal with how to choose coming to something, saying yes to it, and then figuring out how to get there, right? So most people live their life in a way that they want to know how to do everything before they take any action. Again, they spend time thinking about it endlessly. So they'll be by a wall, they have this hat on their head, they want to throw the hat over the fence. That's the yes but people, right? But they won't throw the hat over the fence because they don't know how to get the hat back. Where the person who's successful throws the hat over the wall and then creates a circumstance where they're forced to figure out how to get the hat. So just by you saying yes to buying an event ticket, you are immediately putting that into your future. We talked about that too. And that's going to have impact on you right now in the present so that you can become the kind of person that makes that happen. We have an amazing woman who's in our coach community still, one of our favorite people, Emily, who did this, by the way, and took her family from Australia, her husband and 2 kids, bought a ticket and figured out the whole thing with all the challenges that came up, figured out the whole thing, and had the most transformative 2 days of her life during our event. And this event is a whole day and a half longer than that one. And by the way, if you actually want to see, I saw we posted a video on our Facebook wall, .com/SatoriPrime, where I put up the video for that event. And she was the first person that commented on it and said how transformative that weekend was for her. But she had transformed before she even got there because she dealt with a but that had run her life the entire time. And by the time she showed up, she was ready to do some completely different work than she thought she was going to do. It completely transformed her life. It was incredible. So all you guys have an opportunity to do this. And if you are a yes but and you want to talk to us about how to make that happen, talk to us, but show us that you're committed to coming, right? And again, you will get that ticket price back. So come and get a breakthrough in the areas of life that matter to you. It's going to impact your entire life, just like it did for me when I was 19 years old. That was a completely different future that kid was going to have. one where he was probably not going to be around. I did not think past the age of 21 at all. There was no future out there for me. I lived my life like it was all coming to an end. And when that happened, I was like, holy shit, I actually have to think about what's coming next. It like blew my mind because I just didn't do that. Also, if you have any questions, Jordan is our operations manager and so much more. She's an amazing woman and my ex-girlfriend on top of all that. And if you have any questions about the event, about anything, please email her. If it's appropriate, she'll send it up to us and we'll deal with it directly, personally, no issue. But she's definitely the person to talk to. If you do need to email her, I recommend writing her name down because everyone gets it wrong. Everyone thinks it's Jordan. It's Jordan, Jordanne at SatoriPrime.com, okay? If you know for a fact that you cannot come to our live event, like you're like, guys, I'd love to be there and XYZ is happening in my life, I can't be there, like look at the conversation I just had with you and see if you can make it work. If not, we have other options that you can continue to work with us. I personally think this is a no-brainer. If you want a year's worth of coaching with us and like to do a really intensive program, that's a totally different thing, and I'll talk about that in a second. But your other option is, this should be bi-weekly. I don't know, I never change this. Right? Bi-weekly means every other week. I always forget if it's bi-weekly or bi-monthly. Bi-weekly, right? So if you know you can't make it to the event, you can start getting coaching from us right now. We have a session coming up here in 5 days. Our next meeting is August 30th, excuse me. You can go to youwillhaveitall.com to learn about the coaching here. By the way, for the live event, it's youwillhaveitall.com /live. Should probably tell you where to go, right over here, right? For the group coaching, just go to the homepage itself. There's additional training there on doing a fear exercise. So fear is running the show. That's a really good one to watch. It's $197 a month. We also have 3-month and 6-month coaching packages. Regardless, if you put in Satori coaching, just because you guys were on this webinar today, you'll save $100 off your first month. So which literally means you can get a month worth of coaching with Elon and I for $97, which is stupid cheap. We charge our one-on-one clients right around $5,000 for 2 hours of coaching a month, okay? And trust me, they get ridiculous value. And it's more or less the same conversations. Here it's just in the group setting. People meet from all over the world. It's awesome. We're like one big family in there. We host different challenges and meditation and different areas of life. And people are just like elevating like crazy. So at minimum, come and join that community. You will absolutely love it. And again, you don't have much to lose at $97 a month for your first month, and check it out. If those of you guys who are like, damn, this is freaking awesome. I am looking to transform my life. We have a program called Ascension Program that we only sell it usually internally. If you are interested in that, it is like a revolutionize your life within 12 months and involves some personal coaching. You're also in our group coaching for a year. And there's some other really special things that we do with you that I'm not going to get into here because it's going to take too much time to talk about it. If you are interested in looking at that, email us at support@SatoriPrime.com, right? And in the subtitle or in the title of it, just write in Ascension Program. So we know that that's what you're interested in, and we'll schedule a time to talk with you and have a conversation about that. Really though, really, like I would love to have you in any of these programs. Really where I want you is at the live event. I know that we can just do a lot of really good work in a short period of time because immersion type of things work the best. I've done so much stuff in my life. Every time I immerse myself, again, ask people who know me. I do 10-day trainings. I do 10-day meditations. I always look for immersive events. This is an immersive event. You learn the most when you immerse yourself. Hands down, has the biggest impact on you. So that's it. Any questions about anything today? The events, coaching programs, anything we talked about today, anything I could support you with, help you with, anything at all? If not, then I will bid you adieu tonight. I really, really thank you for your attention. And wherever you are, yes, no, yes, but, look at ways to enhance your life by just developing yourself. And I promise you, really, when you start changing the way that you look at things, the things you look at will actually change. When I woke up that next day after that subway ride, I walked outside. It's like greens I'd never seen greener. Sky was blue. I was just literally altered the landscape in which I walked around, and it absolutely shocked me. And that's possible for every single human on the planet. And I know that because it happened to me, and I've seen it happen to thousands of people since then. So this stuff works. All right, guys, I love you. Looking forward to seeing some of you guys at the live event, other of you in coaching. And yeah, we'll talk soon. We'll see you next week. Thank you so much for everything.